Well, let me see, we're at this crucial point that it's really the question of the observer and the observed, really, that or thinker and the thought, right? That I'm proposing that thought is a process that's just ongoing, not only inside each person, but it passes between people and over through the whole culture and the whole society and over many generations, right? Because the thoughts of Aristotle are still our thoughts, and so on they can be. And perhaps all sorts of thoughts that have happened in the past are still in us somehow, which we're not aware of, right? In the process going on outside, like the wind and the clouds and the rain and so on, it's an ongoing process, right? But we have the impression, or the whole culture says that, and we experience it that way, that thought is controlled by us, right? Each person has thoughts going on inside of him, and he controls them, right? And or he should control them if he doesn't, right? And now I'm saying that these are two very different notions of the structure of thought, and it's crucial. This difference is crucial. If you have a mistaken notion of the structure of thought at this rather deep level, that's going to have very serious consequences in the whole of life, right? Everything we want to do. Now, so what is the point? That thought is going on. We don't know exactly where it starts on it. Somehow it's going on in the brain or in the nervous system and in between people as they communicate. And this thought has an intellectual function which you can have thoughts, you recognize this thought, perhaps you put it in words. And in addition, it has also, it's an emotional function, it has a neurophysiological function of all sorts of chemicals are released in the system, and it has a muscular function. It may produce tensions in the muscles and so on, as you were referring to. And it may even be that the earliest form of thought was a kind of tension in the muscles. You see, it gradually developed into more abstract thought. But for the moment, we seem to be most conscious of the more intellectual levels of the thought, and are not seeing the connection to the other levels, you see. Now, failure to see that means that we will inevitably make the mistake that when the other levels go into operation, thought will assume them to be independent. And if there are feelings, it will assume they're deep gut feelings or deep emotions, things of great significance. See, for example, suppose I think there is something dangerous, you see, and 3 seconds later I get a sinking sensation in the solar plexus. I say, well, that proves it, because that's an instinctive response to danger, right? Saying, when you see danger, you get that sinking feeling which warns you that it's dangerous, right? So you say, now I have gotten a warning that something dangerous, right? I've not followed the fact that 3 seconds later it was the thought that something is dangerous that produced this warning. You see, this warning is now completely misunderstood. It's no more warning than the thought was, right? But it is taken to be a real warning of danger, right? Therefore, your thought begins to think some more about this danger, and it builds up some more, right? Now, you have a runaway, you can then get into a runaway fear situation of panic, right? And building it up, thinking more about what the danger is and how to escape it, and stirring yourself up some more, and so on. Now, the mistake is that that thought has the content that there is a thinker who is producing thought, and the thought has no effect except what the thinker decides to give it, right? And vice versa, the thinker is not affected by what's going on except when he wants to be. And therefore, that is a structure which simply does not exist, right? Any more than the telephone exists in the television image. You see, you may get a very strong feeling that there is a telephone in there and somebody is answering it, but in fact nothing of the kind is going on at all, right? There are only electronic impulses and little spots of light and some sounds coming out of an electronic device, right? So how are you able to get such a strong impression of reality out of so little, right? The hero may be dangling over a cliff and you get sinking sensations in the solar plexus, right? perhaps so in fantasy the same thing happens. We project a fantasy inside of ourselves in danger and get sinking sensations or pleasure or whatever, right? So perhaps nothing of the kind is going on at all, but merely, but that the fantasy nevertheless is real in the sense that it has real effects, that something is really going on to produce that impression, and the whole system is, as it were, watching and behaving accordingly as if that were real, right? So on one hand the fantasy is almost nothing, on the other hand it's tremendous, right? It's a tremendous reality. Right? See, but we may have a language which says there's either fantasy or reality. We can't really pay attention properly to this, because we say if it's fantasy it's nothing, if it's reality it's good solid stuff, powerful and so on. And therefore, how are we going to make that distinction? You see that because fantasy is real and produces very powerful effects, right? Now, one of the tests for reality is whatever produces powerful effects, whatever resists change, whatever it stands by itself. But this fantasy does just that, right? This fantasy of the observer looking at the observed has all those qualities so that it satisfies the test for reality. Therefore, we'll experience it as real. Whatever satisfies the test for reality, you will experience as real, whether it's real or not. That's how illusion is possible, right? You see, the magician creates illusion by your failing to see the connection between what he's doing and what happens. You assume that it happens independently. Therefore, it's magic, right? If it ever happened independently that way, it would be magic. If you don't see what he did, then your senses feel it as magic, right? If you once see what he did, then you say, no, it's nothing at all. You see the trick, and it's not, it's not real, right? But there is a reality. The reality is that he did a trick, right? See, every fantasy has some reality underlying it, and also produces some real effects. If you believe the magician did magic, you will act accordingly. It has a big effect. You see, so therefore, you have to be careful about this distinction of real and unreal. That it's sort of very dynamic, right? Now, if you accept this conclusion or assumption that there is this thinker who is thinking the thought and controls it, then you will act accordingly. The whole system will act accordingly, right? One of the actions would be, I've got to do something about that anger, or whatever it is, the fear. So I've got to control it, right? If it were an external object, that would be right. If this is doing something wrong, and I say I must control it and make it right, you see. But if it's just me, then there's no point. You see, I'm saying on the one hand, look, I am thinking the thought that I have good reason to be angry or good reason to be afraid. On the other hand, I'm thinking I should not be afraid. You see, those are two thoughts put together are absurd, right? If I have good reason to be afraid, I should be afraid, right? If I have good reason to be angry, I should be angry. I mean, why do we say I shouldn't be angry, though I have good reason to be angry? Right? So logically, it makes no sense. It collapses, right? Now, as a thought, it is not it is an irrational thought, right? But still, it goes on, because, well, we have to go into all that. What keeps it going? You see, to be shown the fact that this is a trick, that it is a fantasy, that it is irrational, I suggest is not going to change it. Does everybody see that? Not by itself. You see, that doesn't mean it has no value to show it, but there's more to it than that, right? You see, it's like a map. You see, if you are given a map, you may, if you know how to read maps, you'll perhaps be directed towards something. But if you don't know how to read maps, it doesn't help you. If you don't know how to relate the map to the territory, then the map is of no significance. So we say, this is a map, but how do you find your way in the territory or in the actual fact which the map is mapping? Right?